To the massive news this week that the government is definitely pushing ahead with high-speed rail, the project HS2. Its future had been in some doubt while a review was conducted, but no more. Here's a quick reminder of the story. It's the biggest infrastructure project for generations, and on Tuesday, any uncertainty over its future was lifted.
Today, Mr. Speaker, the Cabinet has given high-speed rail the green signal. We are going to get this done.
The PM travelled to Birmingham, joining West Midlands Mayor Andy Street, one of the project's biggest cheerleaders, on a visit to the huge site of the new HS2 Curzon Street station.
As a Brummie or a person from the West Midlands, to know that we're going to be at the heart of the new national transport network is really a good thing, and it is, of course, going to bring jobs in construction, then in business here in the future.
This is the artist's impression of how the new station will look when it opens. Designed to slash journey times and increase capacity on our overcrowded rail network, the high-speed rail line linking Birmingham to London was first announced by Gordon Brown in 2009. The second phase joining Birmingham to Manchester and Leeds in 2012. In 2017, Phase 1 received royal assent. It was originally due to open in 2026. The finish date is now expected between 2028 and 2030. With the threat of cancellation hanging over the project since the government announced a review last year, many contractors and businesses in the region were hugely relieved this week. But not so the rural communities who've been campaigning against it. Protesters fighting to protect ancient woodland at Covington in Warwickshire are defiant.
Boris Johnson has pressed the go on the destruction of 108 ancient woodlands along the course of HS2. That is no small thing. That is the largest deforestation project since World War I.
The official estimated cost of the project has risen from $56 billion in 2015 to $88 billion, but could rise further to $106 billion. But after initial hesitation, the Prime Minister has now given HS2 his backing, and it's full speed ahead. And we're joined now by Maria Machinkosis from the transport advisory group Midlands Connect, which is a huge supporter of the HS2 project and is working to connect that project to other regional transport services. And also by Joe Rukin from the campaign group Stop HS2, which does exactly what it says on the tin, doesn't it, Joe? But Maria, if I start with you, could you put this into some context for us? How big is this decision, the fact that HS2 is going ahead?
Well, it's hugely important for the Midlands, and on three grounds, I will say. The main one at the moment is certainty, particularly for the West Midlands, when HS2 was already delivering a lot of job creation, economic plan, social activity. So certainty was very important for investors, knowing that this investment was coming and is happening not only here in the West Midlands, but across the Midlands too. So the second argument is more about integration. One of the things that we really welcome from the announcement and the approach the government is taking in announcing the go-ahead for HS2 is that it's acknowledging that HS2 cannot be seen in isolation. It's going to be part of the wider network, and it kind of acknowledged the importance of Midlands Engine Rail, our proposals for improving east-west connectivity in the Midlands.
This is how basically HS2 relates to other rail projects.
Absolutely, and the understanding that HS2 will allow much greater capacity to our local commuter network, and therefore we can now have got that certainty to plan for what that network could look like, not only in the next 5-10 years, but in the next 100. Okay. And that gives us massive scope for work and improving connections between the Midlands and between the Midlands and the North as well.
Okay, and bouncing next to you, wanting to respond is Joe. So Joe, I mean, you've obviously spent the last 10 years campaigning against HS2, but it seems the battle is lost.
Well, you know what, if Boris Johnson hadn't made the decision himself, we would be now looking and saying, well, HS2 has still got to pass notice to proceed, it's still got to demonstrate management capability, affordability of contracts and robustness of a revised business case. But now that he's tied himself to the project, we just think, you know what, like review point 1, when there were certain tests that were in place to make sure that public money wasn't wasted, they just said, no, you failed it, but go ahead anyway. And that's what's going to happen. Like, We've only just found out from the National Audit Office report that last year HS2 was deemed by the Infrastructure and Projects Authority, the government's own watchdog on projects, as unachievable. The programme is unachievable. And Boris Johnson has just basically redefined the word unachievable, ignored the Serious Fraud Office investigation, which is still going on about HS2, and gone ahead.
I have to say at that point, because I thought you might mention that, we did actually make contact with the Serious Fraud Office. There is no formal investigation going on at the moment. They say they're aware of the allegations that you're talking about and they're reviewing information. But just to be clear, there is no formal investigation going on.
Well, if that's the case, I'm sure it will end up going on to the Securities Exchange Commission in America, probably.
I mean, the truth is, though, is that whilst there are well-documented issues around the way the project has been handled, there's been a lot of criticism of HS2 Limited and the finance of the project, which has grown hugely over the last 5 years. The truth is that the Okavi review into this found that despite all of that, the project was still worth pursuing.
The Okavi report was written by the Department of Transport, the very people it was meant to be investigating.
That's not true, is it? I mean,
well, yes, it is true.
The deputy...
That's exactly what...
The deputy of the review released a minority report which was highly critical, so it's not true to say that everybody in the review...
And he said that the reason he said that was because the review was being written by the Department of Transport, having taken evidence from HS2 Limited. That's exactly what Tony Barclay said.
Okay.
Maria, so don't
shake your head at that. No, all we're saying is we need to give credit to an independent panel that was put together. It was not the Department for Transport, that's for sure. And it has put a lot of effort into place to actually show the evidence, because there's a lot of thinking about, there's been a lot of talks about the impacts of HS2 in a negative way. What was not clear and what the people have not been given a chance to see is the wider benefits, not only economically, but also environmentally too. And this is really about showing to the people who constantly are asking, what does it mean for us? And the Okavi report did exactly that.
Okavi did not look at environmental issues at all. And by saying that he's going to go ahead with HS2, Boris Johnson has basically torn up everything he said at the COP26 meeting last week about needing to protect habitats, needing to reduce carbon output. HS2 does exactly the opposite. On HS2's own figures, HS2 is going to be a net carbon contributor for 120 years. And you'll find the lobbyists will say, oh, no, we need it to achieve our net zero targets. And it's simply not the case. And there's so many things about the arguments for HS2 that are counterfactual.
Do you want to come in here? I mean, that is a fair point, isn't it? There is going to be large areas of habitat and woodland affected by the project as it's built over the next 10 years.
I think if you look at the projects done in London, I think it's the Thames Link, there's going to be more woodland destroyed in that small project than there is across the entirety of HS2.
That's simply not the case.
And what we're also not seeing with the environmental impact is we're taking 2 million lorries potentially off the road with their freight.
How?
So that is a huge contributor, therefore, towards getting us towards net zero, which is a fantastic achievement. And remember, we are world leading in that regard in this country.
How does a railway that doesn't carry freight take freight off the rail? Again, Tony Barclay, who spent 15 years as chair of the Rail Freight Group, said that the promises of freight capacity are illusionary. It may even reduce freight capacity north of Crewe. That's what Barclay said.
Zara, you can hear the passion here. Obviously, Joe is passionately against this project. I mean, where do you stand? Coventry is not going to benefit directly.
Absolutely. For me, I think it's really important that we look at public transport, we look at the infrastructure in this country, and we invest in existing infrastructure. For Coventry, my priority is to see what benefit comes from projects that the government is announcing. We don't know if this will, reduce the delays. For me, it's important that we address the increase in rail prices, which have increased by 2.7% already this year. There's overcrowding on the trains, and there's real issues. So for me, we need to start talking about public ownership, and the government itself has taken Northern Rail into public ownership. We need our trains. It seems like every other government in the world can run trains in this country except the British government. So there needs to be a wider conversation around ownership, because private ownership does not work.
But to be clear, are you pro HS2? I mean, your party, as Jeremy Corbyn has signalled, he is in favour of the project.
For me, it's about looking at what Coventry gets from it, and
are you in favour of it?
For me, I don't think it's as clear cut as am I in favour.
So you're still kind of on the fence.
For me, it's about looking at how there's been so much mismanagement with this project. The first phase is expected to be completed at some point within the decade. The second phase within the next 2 decades. costs are spiralling. We don't even know if the 100 billion is actually accurately what it's going to be. So I think there's a lot of discussion and a lot more analysis that needs to take place around
Maria,
this.
do you want? Well, I can tell everybody wants to respond. But Maria, do you want to come in there, because obviously there are real concerns about the way that the price of this has shot up.
I mean, costs need to be totally under control, and that's again, as part of the announcement from government, there's a clear commitment from government to use almost like a COBRA style monitoring, get it under control.
Treat it like it's a national emergency.
Absolutely
almost.
right, and it's got to be well under control. But that shouldn't be, but that shouldn't stop us from understanding the merit of the HS2 itself. And to support the Coventry story, from our perspective, on Midlands Engine Rail programme, the moment we knew HS2 was coming, we've been working together to plan what will it mean to Coventry with the release capacity. So that's
that means cut trains. Release capacity means losing the
release
trains
capacity
that you already have.
That's
what it means for Coventry.
Joe, I'm going to give you the final word on this.
Thank you very much.
And I just want to ask, I mean, it would seem now that the battle is lost. What do you do now?
Well,
as
I think
organisation?
what you found in the last year, there's a lot more people who've woken up to the environmental destruction of HS2. There are still people camped out in the woods, here in the Midlands, down in London as well. Extinction Rebellion are getting really involved
So you
in
are
the
talking,
camps.
you are talking lying down in front of
expect,
bulldozers, direct action.
Absolutely, I very much expect that that's what's going to happen in the next few months, and this is all on Boris. It's you said that you were going to protect the habitats. You said that you were going to reduce carbon, and you've just thrown all that away on something that is been lobbied for by the people who are going to make billions of pounds out of building.
Okay,
Completely disagree. Completely disagree.
Everyone
Drag more stuff to London.
We could have devoted the whole half an hour to this.